Hello and welcome back to the Data Privacy Lawyer. It's Funmi Owolabi, Principal Attorney here. We are going to be doing a review of the Johnson & Johnson cookie policy. Now, if you've been on my channel for a while, you know that we traditionally do privacy policy audits, but because cookies also constitute personal data, I want to take a look at what businesses are doing generally and just provide my insights and things that I generally will look for when I'm working with different organizations and just my insights from the practice that I do with my clients and things like that. We're not going to take a look at the landing page like we traditionally do. Johnson & Johnson provide lots of different products in the United States. Some of them relate to healthcare. So that's really good. We've clicked on the cookie policy and we've been presented with the option to customize our cookie settings. So we're going to turn all these on. I want to mention something about these cookie policy audits that we're going to be doing. You can see here that I've been opted into all of them. They're all in green. Now you might be wondering, why is that? The reason that is because I live in the United States and the data protection laws in the United States allow organizations to opt users in and give them the opportunity to opt out, right? So in the European Union, it's a bit different. If I was accessing this site from the European Union, none of these would be on, or none of these should be on. They would be off. And then users would have the opportunity to opt in. But because I'm accessing it from the United States, I've been opted in and now I have the opportunity to opt out. Now I'll tell you why that's important. It's important because what it demonstrates is that they are operating in a compliant manner for the United States. Jurisdiction really matters on every single level for every single business. What is allowed and permissible in one country may not be allowed and permissible in another country. Now, I always opt out of the cookies. You've seen that on all the privacy policy audits I've done. I think one other thing that would be useful, and we can see here, they actually define what constitutes performance cookies. I think that's really good. I think that more businesses should actually provide this synopsis, and I'll tell you why. The first time you land on a page related to Johnson & Johnson, you should be presented this because cookies constitute personal data, and prior to the collection of any personal data, you have to provide notice, okay? And you have to be transparent. Most consumers are not going to go onto a cookie policy, right? I'm a data protection counsel, which is why we're looking at this. But basically, most consumers are not going to be going onto the cookie policy to find out how Johnson & Johnson use cookies. But they are going to be presented this because Johnson & Johnson has an obligation under the data protection laws to present this to consumers prior to collecting any data related to them. And a cookie is personal data. I also think it's very useful to review this because it lets us make the distinction between what truly is strictly necessary. Some organizations will have a cookie banner, such as this one. Now, this one's powered by OneTrust, which is a cookie manager vendor platform that organizations can partner with to ensure that they're current, always updated. But you as a business don't have to go with a vendor management platform like OneTrust. You can actually go with other third-party providers who facilitate the creation of cookies, and sometimes their definitions may not align with what constitutes a strictly necessary cookie or a performance cookie. So really take a look when you are deciding to engage with any type of platform or third-party provider who allows this cookie banner to be displayed on your site. Make sure that they're really giving you insight into what they consider to be strictly necessary or a performance cookie, because you want to make sure that you're getting this right and you're not confusing the consumer. So I will say that I think it's really good to have these definitions. I've said that already. Let's turn all these off. Ideally today, if we have time, I want to talk about targeting cookies and how important this and what the process is in the background for consumers, because a lot of consumers don't even know what a targeting cookie is, one, and they don't know how it works, and just some ideas for the business on how they can structure the agreements would be useful on what I think and what I see sometimes. So let's get into the actual policy itself. Okay, I'm just going to scroll to the bottom. Okay, this particular policy was last updated June 2022. Now, the reason we're doing these cookie policy audits now is because sometimes I've seen some discrepancy on when the privacy policy is being updated and when the cookie policy is being updated too. Now, a lot of businesses are very familiar now with having a privacy policy and having it updated periodically or annually. What I see fall through the cracks is the cookie policy is generally not updated at the same frequency as the privacy policy, and that shouldn't be the case for a number of reasons. One, because cookies are personal data and the nature of the business generally changes on a quarterly basis. That's what I've seen. Most clients are having some type of product change or vendor change or their customers change or how they manage the business operations change. And all of those activities that I just mentioned always utilize personal data or always have personal data in scope. And if your business operations are changing, that means that how you process personal data likely changes too. So whatever new update you have within the business may influence how cookies are distributed on a web browser or the third-party vendors that you engage. We just saw earlier on the cookie banner that Johnson & Johnson talked about advertising cookies, right? If it is in fact that how cookies are utilized by Johnson & Johnson haven't changed since June 2022, then that would mean that their cookie policy is compliant. What I do see is all of these changes generally influence how the site is conducted. I think that the cookie policy should be updated on the same frequency as the privacy policy. And I'm pretty sure if we click on this, we'll see that this was updated more frequently. Let's take a look. Okay, interesting. This was also updated November 2022. So ultimately this needs to be updated. I'll tell you why. We're not going to dwell too much on the privacy policy, but you can see this US supplemental privacy policy addresses these laws. This has since increased since 2022. This list of state privacy laws, it's increased. So that would mean that an update is necessary basically to accommodate all of the obligations that Johnson & Johnson now has related to the specific state privacy laws, because there's more than 5 of them. Let's go back to the cookie policy. I will say one thing that I think is interesting is the definitions they give about what the cookies do. I think there definitely needs to be more information related to assisting with our promotional and marketing efforts. I think that this is a little bit vague, and I think that consumers are more sophisticated now about their personal data than ever. Having more insights into what all of this is would be really useful for consumers to understand how the cookies work at your organization and what's going on with their personal data. They also have a cookie list here. I'm intrigued about whether or not this is reflective of the last time this was updated or whether this is indicative of what's happening in 2025. Now, the situation there is, if this cookie list is outdated, what it means is Johnson & Johnson may be using additional cookies that they've not reflected on their site here, which means there may be more personal data being collected about a consumer than they've stated on their site. Now, I will say that this language is catch-all language, and it could cover Johnson & Johnson if there are additional cookies not listed here, but that analyze the use of their products, services, and application, which is why I think that it's necessary to update this more periodically to add additional details about what your business is actually doing, like if there are other tracking technologies that are being utilized. And I will say there is a new level of sophistication among certain third-party providers on how cookies are collected. So that would be something that needs to be updated if it is in fact that Johnson & Johnson are utilizing those. So I really hope you enjoyed this cookie policy audit. I will continue to do more cookie policy audits on this channel. If your business is looking for data protection counsel to assist you with making sure you're compliant with the data protection laws as it relates to these external facing documents, take a look at the description below. I would love to help your business. I'll see you in another video.